Hi, everyone, and welcome to the lineup. Today is March 28th, 2024. I'm Barry Stagner, and looking forward to a wonderful celebration this weekend of the resurrection of Christ. And, if you'd like to join us in person, we're having Good Friday services at noon and 6:30 p.m. at the church, Calvary Central OC. If you'd like to watch online, you can go to calvarycoc.org and live stream it from there. You can watch it through my Pastor Barry Stagner Facebook page as well, if you'd like to join us. And then, of course, our regular Sunday morning services on Resurrection Day, Easter Sunday, 9 and 11 a.m., if you'd like to join us. And, we've been having a kind of very interesting and powerful week at the church as the Lord laid on my heart to have a week of fasting and prayer. Passion Week prayer, and boy, our prayer times in the evenings have been just powerful. And I want to encourage you. What we've been doing is we've been praying for lost souls, and we've been praying for them specifically and by name. And I would encourage you to pray that the Lord give you boldness to share the gospel with people in your family and life who don't know Christ and need Him. Because, we could say this at any given year, but boy, it sure seems like every Easter Resurrection Sunday is more potentially the last than the last one. And boy, things are really heating up and getting stranger and stranger in this delusional world. And so I encourage you, pray for the people by name, get together with other people in your church or circle, and pray for your family members. And it's just been a powerful time each evening this week as people have just been pleading with God for the souls of their loved ones. And we've just had a beautiful time in prayer. And that will end this evening at the church. And then, of course, tomorrow is Good Friday, and we'll have our two services that I mentioned on that day, and then the two regular Sunday morning service times on Sunday. So with that said, we've got a lot of interesting things going on, and I want to switch gears a little bit partway through the program, but we obviously need to pay attention to what's happening in Israel. Israel is the center point of last days Bible prophecy, and everything circulates around what's happening with them, and there is much going on. And the Jewish News Syndicate reports our first story, and the headline reads, Biden's UN betrayal of Israel is a victory for Hamas. The terrorists were certain that the West would save them from defeat in Gaza. The administration has now confirmed they were right. Don't believe the Biden administration's claim that it hasn't changed its stance on Israel's war on Hamas. The U.S. abstention on the vote in the UN Security Council for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza isn't just a routine political or diplomatic maneuver. It's a fundamental betrayal of the U.S. Israel alliance, whose consequences go far beyond the immediate. The White House believes its political interests require it to force the Jewish state to give up its goal of eliminating Hamas from the Gaza Strip. What a foolish decision this administration has made. Another one, I should say. And rather than merely sacrificing Israel's security, it's also handing a major victory to both Hamas and its Iranian allies, which we'll talk about in our next article. And Fox News is reporting that Hamas and Iran's leaders delight in the ceasefire call U.S. no vote and see it as a faithful turning point. And Iran praised Hamas for proving the myth of Israel's invincibility in the region. And Hamas leadership met with Iranian counterparts in a highly publicized engagement, seemingly to promote and praise the UN Security Council's resolution urging a ceasefire. Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, held a press conference on Monday with Iranian Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdollahanian, during which the pair praised the UN resolution for serving as a heavy blow to Israel's political and military goals. We are going through a historical stage and a fateful turning point in the context of the historical conflict with the Zionist entity, Haniyeh said, referring to the October 7th attack as the Al-Aqsa flood. Haniyeh also met with Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei to discuss developments related to the ongoing war in Gaza and the variables related to the Palestinian issue, the Jerusalem Post reported. And Khamenei, meanwhile, praised the resistance groups for exceptional resilience. Al Monitor reported based on reading a published statement on the Supreme Leader's website. And this marks the second time since the October 7th attack that on Israel that Haniyeh has visited the Iranian leadership. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made it clear in no uncertain terms that he viewed the abstention as damaging to his country's position and efforts to stamp out Hamas and obtain the release of all hostages. This withdrawal damages both the war effort and the effort to release the hostages because it gives Hamas hope that the international pressure will allow them to accept the ceasefire deal without the release of our hostages, Netanyahu's office said in a statement. And again, as we mentioned, everything regarding the last days Bible prophecies is centered on the nation of Israel. We have to remember that where the world is headed is to the 70th week of Daniel, the 70 heptads, or the 77-year periods that were determined for Daniel's people in the holy city. And with verses like Zechariah 12:3, where it tells us the focus point of world attention in the last days is going to be on Jerusalem and, the eternal capital of Israel. And we're seeing that movement in that direction happening right now. And, if you read through Zechariah, especially chapter 12 and through the balance of that particular verse, 12:3, it talks about the fact that those who would heave the city away, those who would divide it, are going to be cut into pieces. And so obviously it's a foolish thing for our government to change its direction on supporting Israel. And it's the consequences are a little bit of what we want to talk about here in a moment. Now, another paper out of Israel, Haaretz, says that defense officials fear the Bibi-Biden Spat could do lasting harm to U.S. Israel ties. Now, this is an important headline because, one, we do know that Zechariah 12, verse 3, says all nations are going to gather against Israel. They will all, in unity, turn against them. Now, again, I think this is important because we need to understand that we are watching the development of things that will reach their fulfillment during the tribulation. All of this can't and isn't going to happen in the spans of, the first 3.5 years of the tribulation when the Antichrist takes over, as Revelation 6:2 shows, and brings in that covenant made with many regarding the nation of Israel, specifically solving the Middle East crisis, bringing a pseudo peace to the world, and then claiming at the midpoint of the tribulation to be God himself in the most holy place of the third rebuilt temple. And the Jews at that point in time are told to run, and everything is going to shift gears. So the mentality and the spiritual nature of humanity, the delusional state, all has to be in the developmental stages prior to the beginning of the tribulation. And I believe we are deep into that today. And just watching the world and everybody fall into place. And there was an article I didn't include it on tonight's program, but there was an article where the headline said, most or the majority of Americans believe that Israel has gone too far in Gaza. And just this kind of thinking is just tragic. And it's a trickle-down mentality that comes from this administration and the propaganda that they continue shoving down people's throats. And, the Lord said, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords said, when he brings them back into the land, Ezekiel 36:21 says, he's doing it for his name's sake. And this is why Amos could write in chapter 9:15 that once the Jews are back into the land, they will not be uprooted again. They will not be plucked up from the land. Now, Zechariah talks about the city being divided in two during the tribulation period, but it's not a politicalizing, and it's not for the establishment of a Palestinian state. It's because of the war that's going on at that point in time that God himself is going to bring to an end. And, the end of the tribulation period obviously concludes with the second coming of Christ. Now, I think we have to keep in mind that in these things that we're seeing, we are seeing things that no other generation before us has seen. And therefore, we should have even more confidence to get up every day thinking today is a great candidate for the blessed hope to happen, the appearing of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ in the air to meet the church and the dead in Christ. And boy, today be a great day for that. I know you would agree. But the Israeli prime minister's threat made no impression on the U.S. president, who has run out of patience. The Americans don't understand what Netanyahu wants, but from an Israeli perspective, the answer is clear. And some would say to stay in power at any price. No, that's not it. And Haaretz does often lean in the liberal direction. Netanyahu's desire is to bring an end to Hamas, who are bent on killing Jews. The Israeli Defense Force continues to inundate Israel on a daily basis with images and PR statements from the fighting in the Gaza Strip. But the most important developments are taking place far from the battlefield. And the article goes on to talk about the U.S. administration's criticism of the war and the three main issues being difficulties in providing humanitarian aid to Gazans, excessive civilian deaths, and Netanyahu's frequent threats to invade Rafah. Well, if that's where Hamas is hiding and holed up, and there's even talk of that being where the hostages, the remaining hostages are, then they have to go in and take care of business. But again, just it's really a sad day here in the United States, and watching, just such a series of foolish decisions that bring about, potentially the destruction of our country, civil war, and all these other things that seem to be looming on the horizon. But that's what the Bible said it's going to be like in the last days. And we have to remember, one of the things in the opening statements of the Olivet Discourse where Jesus said, there are going to be certain things that naturally recur in both society and creation, the earthquakes and pestilence and things of that nature. But he also talked about the nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And, that's not a redundant statement. I mean, the nations are kingdoms, are basilia, and that talks of ruling government entities. There can be prime ministers or presidents, and countries will be at odds with one another. But also we have nations being the Greek word ethnos, which speaks of ethnicity and ethnic tensions. And, we're seeing this rising up around the world, and we've watched it rear its head. And now we're seeing places like London and other places around the world where these tensions are causing things to move into the next level. And this is going to be on a global scale before too much longer, I believe. And again, precursors to the tribulation period. Now, these next sets of stories, I think, are interesting because they remind us of what is going to be going on during the tribulation. One of the things I think that's always a curiosity is, and I want to use ISIS as an example, the Bible says that there's going to be a series of invading nations or a group of invading nations that are going to have a hook put in their jaw and be drawn down out of the north in Ezekiel 38 and 39 in that war scenario, I should say. And, wondering how in the world are these people, much of which are avowed enemies of Israel, how are they going to find a physical presence up on the northern border of Israel to be drawn down from? And now we know that looking back, we can see that ISIS was the mechanism that caused or allowed for a military presence of Iranians and the Turkish military, as well as the Russians, to be on the northern border of Israel. So, we don't know exactly what all is going to lead to some of the things, the economic disasters that we see during the tribulation period. We have to remember that under the riders of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, people are going to kill each other. The beasts of the earth are going to compete for the food supply. They're going to be attacking humans, it seems to imply. And this all is going to stem from the fact that just a quart of wheat or 3 quarts of barley, which is enough food for one person for one meal, and that's it, one person, one meal, is going to cost a whole day's pay. Now, I'm not saying that this is directly feeding it, But these types of things remind us that the world is headed for economic disaster and famines of an unprecedented scale. And it's not because of climate change. It's because of wars and God responding to the rejection of his plan and his defense of his people, the nation of Israel. And the Western Journal reports that the Baltimore Bridge collapse is more devastating than it seems. It's an economic nuclear strike. By now, most people have seen the shocking images of the devastating collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, Maryland, that happened on Tuesday morning. And it would be hard to forget the sight of a cargo ship hitting the 1.6-mile bridge, with the bridge almost instantly crumbling on impact into the Patapsco River. Not sure how you pronounce that. That's a weird letter grouping. But what caused the cargo ship to ram into the bridge, or what was faulty in the construction of the bridge to make it collapse so readily, has not yet been discovered. However, as many users on X have noted, the ramifications of this disaster will be devastating for Baltimore's infrastructure. And sharing a map of the Port of Baltimore circling the location of the bridge, as well as other main highways, all shipping from the north, city representative said, is now trapped in place. No other shipping can get in. The tunnel shown has height and hazardous cargo restrictions, and obviously there's a briefing going on with pictures in the background. And it can't take the heavy trucking traffic that used the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which took years to build back in the 70s. And considering that the Port of Baltimore is the main port for both Baltimore and Washington, D.C., this accident, as Bracken said, the spokesman, was a major infrastructure hit. And other users shared Bracken's original post with a combat correspondent, Michael Yon, calling it an economic nuke strike. And history professor and maritime historian Sal Merguriano pointed out this closes the Port of Baltimore and shuts down any traffic into or out of it. Did you catch that this is the main port for Washington, D.C.? Other users shared Bracken's original post, as I said a moment ago. And now the greatest tragedy of this disaster was, of course, the loss of human life. At least 6 people that were part of a construction crew working on the bridge are still missing. 5 vehicles have been seen underwater using sonar technology, 3 of which are thought to be passenger cars. Now, obviously, and I'm not saying that this is, an act of God, but it's curious. The timing of it is curious, and it reminds us of what is going to happen during the tribulation period. There are going to be who knows what type of things are going to be the cause of it, but things like this. Here you've got a city basically cut off from all shipping, and we do see that happening in the tribulation period where there's a great mountain burning with fire, and the ships of the sea, the third of them are destroyed, and a comet strike, the star wormwood, which makes the drinking water bitter or radioactive. All of these types of things will be going on then. But these, I think once in a while we are safe in assuming that there are things that happen that are kind of shots across the bow to wake people up. That there is things coming that the Bible has predicted or prophesied that are going to happen just as they were written. And as I said with the ISIS thing, who knows what the means will be to bring about this economic disaster? But we've got something that is specific and really catastrophic in our day. Our country the U.S. went through a Great Depression. The whole world really went through it. And, looking at what happened back in the 30s with the soup lines and all that, you've got people dressed in suits, waiting patiently, no scuffles in line, just waiting for a bowl of soup and a piece of bread so they can have something to eat that day. And we don't have that kind of society today. We have a violent society as it was in the days of Noah. The earth is filled with violence. And rather than having people standing patiently in a soup line waiting for a bowl of soup or a daily ration of food, what we will have, should this happen even before the rapture of the church is violence and robberies and there's just no element of self-control in so many people today, and we see that manifested in all segments of society today. And all that to say, I think we are so close, and the Lord coming for us. And there's a lot of people who issue a word of caution about saying, Jesus is coming for us soon. And I think that may have been legitimate some time ago. But I said this years ago, and I've had people bring it up occasionally. Listen, if Jesus doesn't come soon, we're going to have to rethink our whole eschatological position. Israel's back in the land. Growing hatred of them is becoming global. The people are lovers of themselves, boasters, proud, all the things 2 Timothy 3 indicated. There's the many within the church don't put up with sound doctrine. All of these things that are specific to the last days are happening right now. The Ezekiel Coalition and the invasion team from the north is poised and ready to be drawn down with a hook in their jaw. At least 3 of the 5 nations, the others are in coalition with those invading forces, they being Sudan and Libya, are in full agreement with Turkey and Iran, and have an interest, as Russia does, in the economic component of the invasion of Israel. We have those nations that are going to question these invading forces, making overtures and seeking to normalize or at least establish diplomatic relations with the nation of Israel, that being the Arab Gulf states headed by Saudi Arabia. They are on at least speaking terms, and we're seeing things that have never happened before. An Israeli presence in different shows in Dubai, things that are simply unheard of. So everything is in place. So I don't think we're infringing upon no man knows the day or the hour by saying that Jesus is coming soon, because everything is lining up. And I think we're pretty late in the game. And, if I'm wrong and we're not going to see the group plan anytime soon, and should we all live long enough to meet death, we're still going to heaven anyway. So I think it's a win-win situation either way. Now, the Daily Mail reports that, and this kind of along the same lines of our last story, 8 states are planning to ban the sale of gas-powered cars entirely after Biden unveiled ambitious plans to phase them out by 2032. California was the first state to adopt a ban to plan sales of gas cars by 2035, and electric vehicles make up 7.6% of new car sales in the U.S. As of last year. At least 8 states are planning to ban the sale of new gas-powered cars in the next decade, and many others are considering joining them. Only zero-emission vehicles can be sold in participating states beginning from the 2035 model year, according to the Advanced Clean Cars 2 legislation. The rule, which was first adopted by California, means that automakers and dealerships will be banned from selling new gas cars in these states from that point forward. Now, Americans will not be forced to take their gas-powered cars off the road, however, and will still be able to buy used and secondhand gas vehicles. These states have gone further than the latest federal legislation announced last week, where the Biden administration released new rules to gradually phase out gas cars by 2032. Now, again, the people in places of power are unbelievably incompetent, and the things that they say are just beyond the pale. I mean, they're beyond ridiculous, and they fringe on lunacy. It was in the last summer heat wave that our illustrious governor Gavin Newsom was telling people not to charge their electric cars to lighten the burden on the power grid. And we go through this every year. We've got rolling brownouts and all kinds of things happening because of the underpowering of our state. Here we've got some 39 million people living in California, and we're being told to run our appliances at night where the burden on the power grid is lower. And so now they're trying to save, which, these electric vehicles take a huge draw. And, it can't happen. We cannot power and charge all these vehicles. It is absolutely impossible. And they continue to refuse to build new uh, uh, electrical stations and all these other things because of the environmental impact. And it's just, again, it's unbelievable the lunacy that we're experiencing today. But again, you need a delusional people to believe the lie of the Antichrist. I mean, they won't believe that there is a God in heaven who sits on high, who spoke all things into existence in 8 9 day cycles. But some deceiver comes along, does a couple of tricks. And because we have an already delusional society, excuse me, inhabiting most of the earth, people are going to follow him. Those who dwell on the earth, all of them, are going to worship him. Now, are we seeing a society today that is so messed up and mixed up, they follow things that are just downright idiotic? Well, here's an example. And you've got 8 states that said they're going to jump on this, complete the ban of new sales of gas-powered cars by 2035, and other states are considering it. And I'll remind you, there are people putting these people into office. And again, just looking at this, especially using California as an example, and them the first to put their name on the dotted line, is just beyond ridiculous. You can't even keep the electricity on here on a hot day. So how are we going to power all these cars without building any new charging plants? Well, again, I'm sorry to get off on a rant, but it just frustrates me unbelievably just basic logic. This can't happen. And you know what they're trying to do is control us. They're trying to control us when we travel. And we've all heard about these 15-minute cities to where people are going to live in a portion of a city where everything is within 15 minutes from home. Won't be allowed to drive any further than 15 minutes. And that's one reason that they're pushing for these electric cars, is so if you step over your allotment of miles of travel time, they can just turn your car off. And we hear about all these things and people talk, oh, that's conspiracy. No, that's not conspiracy. That's reality. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to control us. And, because that's one of the first things that any Marxist or socialist or communist government does, is they have to control the people. They take their weapons and then they make them dependent upon the government. And that's exactly what's going on here. So I don't know. I hope, I don't want to say I believe, but I kind of do. I don't see how we can still be here in 2035 or even much longer for that state. Again, just crazy world. The Western Journal says California fast food chains to fire workers as $20 minimum wage kicks in. California is already beginning, and this is what our governor has done. He's implemented a $20 an hour minimum wage for people flipping burgers. And, where we came up with this, it's just this whole egalitarian thinking. Everything has to be equal. I remember when I first started working, I just was sweeping sawdust up in a lumber yard that my dad was the mill foreman of, and I got 50 cents an hour. And when I went to work later, working through the summer as an older teenager, I made $2.50 and thought, man, I am bringing in the bacon. And but now here for something that's not meant to be a career choice, flipping hamburgers at McDonald's or anywhere else, they're getting paid $20 an hour to do so because of this whole all things must be equal mentality. And California is already beginning to see the consequences of raising its minimum wage for certain workers as fast food chains begin to slash their workforces in response to the hike to $20 an hour. The layoffs came ahead of the April 1 implementation of the new minimum wage increase approved by the Democrat-led state assembly in Sacramento. And again, this is just the incompetent leadership. Who do they think is going to pay for this? You think they're going to start paying people $20 an hour and the meal prices are going to stay the same? I mean, we talked, I think it's been a few months now, where we mentioned that there was one place where a Big Mac combo meal was $18. And that's where all this is headed. And they're trying to paint themselves as heroes and get all these people to vote for them because they worked it out where they can pay $20 an hour. But the truth is, everybody else is going to be paying for it. And not only are there going to be layoffs, but there's already, I read a little clip of an article yesterday that people aren't going out to eat like they used to because they can't afford it. And the layoffs come ahead of the implementation, as I said. And this Democrat-led state assembly in Sacramento, targeting fast food businesses, especially pizza chains, have begun rolling out their plans to cut their payrolls, according to the Wall Street Journal. Pizza Hut and Round Table Pizza will eliminate more than 1,200 delivery driver jobs, according to the state records that companies must file when laying off a large number of workers. And Michael Ojeda, who was a Pizza Hut driver for 8 years, was told by his employer that his last day of work was in February. Again, from the Wall Street Journal. And the now former employee blasted the company saying Pizza Hut was my career for nearly a decade, and with little notice it was taken away. Round Table, a chain based in Menlo Park, California, with about 400 restaurants, said delivery services will pick up where its former employees left off. We anticipate third-party delivery providers. In turn, we will see a boost in their business. They will see a boost in their businesses, which will require additional staff on their end, a spokesman for Roundtable said in a statement. And that said, the delivery service fees may increase. So who's paying for this? The people that have their pizzas delivered. And the customer will most likely see even higher prices as a result of this ongoing shift, he said. This is a reality of today's restaurant business. And Brian Holm, the owner of several Vitality Bowl locations, said he is cutting down on employees as well because of the minimum wage increase. I'm definitely not going to hire anyone, Holm said to the Wall Street Journal, and several restaurant chains said they would be increasing menu prices to make up for the higher operational costs being forced upon them by the new state law. And not all restaurants have been forced to the 25% per hour increase in wages. Panera Bread was given a waiver from the minimum wage law after Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom carved out an exemption for the national chain, and Newsom was able to exempt Panera by adding a provision to the Fast Food Accountability and Standards Recovery Act, allowing companies that make bread as a standalone item to skip out on having to pay the higher minimum wage. And Greg Flynn, the billionaire CEO of Flynn Restaurant Group and the owner of about 24 Panera sites, has been a close friend of Newsom since high school. Isn't that interesting, according to Bloomberg? He's also been a huge donor to Newsom's political machine. Can anyone say corruption? I mean, it's just unbelievable. I saw a little clip yesterday that was asking, someone had asked Nancy Pelosi, if you make $179,000 a year, how do you become worth $120 million? Well, corruption is the answer. And boy, are we seeing it today. And Zero Hedge says State Farm Insurance drops 72,000 California properties. And we're seeing the unraveling of structures that have been in place for decades and even hundreds of years. And State Farm will not renew approximately 72,000 property and commercial apartment policies, of which approximately 30,000 will be for homeowner, rental, residential community, and business owner insurance, and the remainder of which are for commercial apartment policies, according to the Sacramento Bee. Last May, the company announced that it would stop accepting applications for property and business properties due to higher construction costs, growing risks from wildfires and other catastrophic events, and challenges related to how it insures its own business. Last week, the company cited those challenges in an announcement, along with the limitations of working within decades-old insurance regulations. And California says it's fixing the issues with Insurance Commissioner Ricardo Lara, announcing upcoming regulatory changes that his office says will improve conditions for the overall market. Government's got to take care of it. I love the statement of Ronald Reagan, a wonderful president, who said the 9 most fearful words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And boy, if that's not the truth. And here we have, the government they're going to step in and fix this. And, again, if any of you who own a home out there know that you have to carry mortgage insurance. I mean, you have to have your home insured, or property insurance, I should say. And, here you've got one of the biggest insurance companies in the country, State Farm, uh, refusing to insure people because of where they are. And bottom line is it's all about money, obviously. So we don't want to insure people in places where something could actually happen. We just want to insure people that are going to send us money every month. And we don't have to worry about ever having to pay them anything. And again, this is the mentality of today. And, the self-oriented society, whether it's a company or an individual, we're seeing all of that feeds into the mindset of the tribulation period happening right in front of us. Now, I've got some stories tonight that I wanted to touch on just because they are unbelievably ridiculous. And, this is coming from people who want to lead the world into the next season of global history. And MoneyWise reports that the World Economic Forum speaker has warned that every time we drink coffee, we are putting CO2 into the atmosphere. And the speaker said, with each ton of Joe coffee emits an alarming 15 to 20 tons of CO2. So 1 ton emits 15 to 20 tons of CO2. Do the math. How is that possible? The topic recently came up during a panel discussion at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, and speaker Hubert Keller highlighted a crucial yet often overlooked issue for coffee drinkers. And every time we drink coffee, he went on to say, we are basically putting CO2 into the atmosphere, Keller stated. Keller, who is a senior managing partner at Swiss private bank Lombard Odier Group, provided a quantification of this environmental impact. The coffee that we all drink emits between 15 and 20 tons of CO2 per ton of coffee, so we should all know that, he remarked. And the World Economic Forum, a non-governmental agency that aims to improve the world by bringing together business, political, academic, and societal leaders to help provide solutions to the world's greatest problems, including climate change. What's the solution? Don't drink coffee. However, I mean, can you believe this? It's just unfathomable. The unfathomable. You get what I'm saying. That the things that people are promoting as fact and trying to save the world, and again, just ridiculous things being pushed upon us. Yeah, and no more gas-powered cars after 2035. Stop drinking coffee. It's one ton is emitting 15 to 20 tons of CO2, and I mean just the unbelievable, ridiculous things that people will stand there with a straight face and say into the microphone, just beyond understanding. Here's another story, and like I said, I want to focus on some ridiculous things because you have to have a ridiculous mindset to follow the ridiculous claim of the Antichrist being God. And you also have to be pretty far gone in your thinking in order to support the mass slaughter of people who refuse to take the mark or follow have the testimony of Jesus and the Word of God, as Revelation talks about. You've got to have some problems mentally to get on that bus, so to speak. And NBC News says, melting polar ice is slowing the Earth's rotation with possible consequences for timekeeping. Global warming has slightly slowed the Earth's rotation, and it could affect how we measure time. According to a study published Wednesday, found that the melting of polar ice, an accelerating trend driven primarily by human-caused climate change. Well, I wonder how the last 2 ice ages ended if there was no industrial age or anything polluting the air, has caused the Earth to spin less quickly than it would otherwise. And the author of the study, Duncan Agnew, a geophysicist at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography at the University of California, San Diego, said that as ice poles melt, it changes where the Earth's mass is concentrated, and the change in turn affects the planet's angular velocity. Agnew compared the dynamic to a figure skater twirling on the ice. If you have a skater who starts spinning, if she lowers her arms or stretches out her legs, she will slow down. But he said if a skater's arms are drawn inward, the skater will twirl faster. And less solid ice at the poles then means more mass around the equator, Earth's waist. And what you're doing with the ice melt is you're taking water that's frozen solid in places like Antarctica and Greenland, and that frozen water is melting, and you move the fluids to other places on the planet. Said Thomas Herring, a professor of geophysics at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, who is not involved in the new study. The water flows off towards the equator, and the study suggests, in other words, that human influence has monkeyed with the force that scholars, stargazers, and scientists have puzzled over for millennia. Something long considered a constant that was out of humanity's control. It's kind of impressive, even to me. We've done something that measurably changes how fast the Earth rotates, Agnew said. Things are happening that are unprecedented. And again, Genesis chapter 8, verse 22, the Lord said, seed time and harvest, winter and summer, he is in charge of the climate of this planet. And for a puny little man to think that he can reverse what God has initiated is just beyond the pale. It's just, again, stunning, the ridiculousness of the things that people are promoting and defending today. And, we do have some influence of a spiritual nature participating in this. And LifeSite News reports that the Vatican turned off the lights for Earth Hour to promote respect for our Mother Earth. Well, I got news for you. Earth is not our mother. God is our Father without question. And, Earth is not an object of worship. We have no spiritual relationship with the earth, as seems to be promoted by so many today. It is a giant dirt clod hung in space with an iron core, the only planet we know that is mostly comprised of water over nearly 3/4 of the Earth's surface, and it was created specifically for the habitation of humanity by God himself. And Earth is not our mother. To hear this coming out of a spiritual entity, as they say, the Catholic Church and the Vatican specifically, again, it's just beyond ridiculous. In a statement issued to journalists accredited to the Holy See late Saturday afternoon, Father Enzo Fortunato, the recently appointed Director of Communications for St. Peter's Basilica, announced the darkening of the Basilica that evening. On the occasion of the Earth Hour initiative, the dome of St. Peter's Basilica will be turned off this evening for 1 hour starting at 8:30 p.m., a symbolic gesture to raise awareness and inspire men and women of our time to respect our Mother Earth and to take action against the climate crisis. Fortunato, coordinator of the upcoming World Children's Day and former director of the press of Basilica of Assisi, pointed to Pope Francis' ecological encyclical Laudato Si. In his encyclical, Pope Francis reminds us that the ecological issue must be centered on ethics and social justice, and that what is happening to the earth, our common home, is an unprecedented challenge that concerns our responsibility to others and future generations. Fortunato attested that by turning off the lights at the Papal Basilica, we unite in prayer and action, testifying to our willingness to protect the common home that God has entrusted to us, so that after this brief darkness, the light as a sign of hope for a sustainable future in harmony with creation. And again, just unbelievable the things that are happening in our world today. And, to find a group that claims to have an association with Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, to even use a phrase like Mother Earth is beyond ridiculous. And yet, here we are. We've got one of the largest portions of that, which is called the church in the world. Over 1.3 billion people are Catholics, and the leader of that is calling the earth our mother. Just unreal. Well, just when you thought you'd heard it all, listen to this one, and we'll wrap up with this. The postmillennial article reads, and the headline says, it's rather lengthy, Canadian Unitarian Church in Calgary to host an all-ages drag show to celebrate Easter. Yeah, you heard it right. Canadian Unitarian Church in Calgary to host all-ages drag show to celebrate Easter. The Calgary Unitarian Church is calling the event Drag Me to Church. What does transformation mean today? A church in Calgary, Canada is hosting an all-ages drag show to celebrate Easter Sunday with an event called Drag Me to Church. What does transformation mean? Today, March 31st, is also International Trans Day of Visibility. You know, when I read stuff like this, I just think, our God is so kind and he is so patient, unwilling that any should perish. And even, just hearing heinous statements like these or calling the earth our mother, um, he just is patient in ways I don't think any of us are. We should all be thankful for that. That includes us and his patience. He's patient with us too. And this event is being put on by the Calgary Unitarians, a group that says on its page that it is united by values rather than belief in one set of creed or dogma. It's united by values. In other words, it's united by the values they determine. A flyer for the event on Eventbrite, which is now sold out, states Easter Sunday service has never been so lit. Drag queen performances and story time for all ages, singing, dancing, and so much more. The invite for the event called it a thought-provoking service that would be a sacred act of protest. Well, there's nothing sacred about it. It's an abomination. To support our trans siblings during the current political climate. We're also going to pass a collection plate, and 100% of the proceeds will go to Skipping Stone, a local nonprofit that supports trans folks and are mobilizing to bring legal action to protect our communities, the invite added. International Transgender Day of Visibility falls on Easter this year, and the group is combining the two, according to a reporting from the National Post. No matter what tradition you're from, I guarantee that you will have people in your community who identify on the 2S, I'm not sure what that, the alphabet group added now a number, 2S LGBTQIA plus spectrum, whether they are free to say it or not, said Samaya Oakley, the leader of the Calgary Unitarian group. If we are truly people who believe in the goodness and the inherent love that exists in this world, then we would extend that to people on that spectrum. Under the frequently asked questions of the Eventbrite event, the proposed answer to the will this be kid friendly from the group is the Pope a snazzy dresser? Of course it will be for all ages. Such mockery. It's just unbelievable. And I say it again, I'm just stunned at how gracious and kind and patient the Lord is. But he will not always strive with man. And there is coming a day where we're going to get up, and it's the final day. It's the day of the rapture of the church, the close of the church age, and the time of the Gentiles, and the shift to the 70th week of Daniel. I believe that, and I've said before, I don't think the rapture signals the beginning of the tribulation. I think the world is going to be reeling for a time. I don't think it's going to be too long. Just out of necessity, there will be a man who stands up, as in writing, a covenant, as prophesied in Daniel 9, who will bring the world to a place of organization, a single system of global commerce is going to be implemented. And, you think about, what's going to happen with all the mass disappearance of people, the level. I mean, we've already got a problem with identity theft now, but imagine, millions of bank accounts there for the taking, so to speak, and vehicles and homes and all of that. So we have to remember that this mark of the beast is going to be presented as a positive. We've got a cashless system where, there's no fraud possible, and pretty much eliminates stolen cash out of people's homes. And you have to take the mark signifying your alliance with the global governmental system, all these other things. And basically what Revelation 13 says is that all the world is going to worship the dragon who empowers the beast. We know who the dragon is. And, think about the things we just talked about today and how bizarre they are. Is the world ready for such a thing? Is the world primed to hand over control to a single governing body based out of somewhere in the revived Roman Empire under a single man who is its head? And, everybody's leaning in that direction. Governments all over the world are seeking to get control over their people and take away any type of element or component of liberty and basically force them into submission. And this is going to reach its zenith during the tribulation, because if you don't take the mark, you will be beheaded for your faith. And there's a numberless multitude from every tribe, tongue, nation, and people who refuse the mark during the tribulation period and have the testimony of Jesus, and they will die for their faith in Christ. Now, I say that for two reasons. One, it's biblically stated. And secondly, don't mess around and miss the rapture of the church. It's as biblical of a doctrine as any other in Scripture. And, for those who say the word rapture is not in the Bible, yes, it is. It may not be in the English Bible, but it's in the Latin Vulgate, and it's the word rapturos, and it means, and it's translated as caught up in our English Bibles, and it's talking specifically about the very same thing. The rapturos and the harpazo are talking about the rapture of the church. The rapture of the church is absolutely in the Bible, and it's as sound of a doctrine as any, as I said. So keep looking up. Crazy times we live in, and so frustrating, I think, for most of us to watch the incompetent leadership of the world, which, by the way, was prophesied in Isaiah chapter 2. At the time when the Lord rises to shake the earth, Isaiah says, he says it twice in that chapter, he says he will give them children for their rulers or princes. And that's, I don't think that's to be taken literally, but I mean, the figurative meaning of children for princes or rulers would be incapable and unqualified leaders, incompetent, those unable to handle the position. And we are seeing that all over the world. There was even a little clip this morning that I saw that the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, said that praying out loud or reading from the Bible out loud are hate speech. Well, you know who's behind all this, and he's got foolish people that will follow after him, and that the one behind all that is Satan. But what we have to remember that we're going to celebrate this weekend is that his effectiveness was made null and void early in the morning on the first day of the week when the tomb was found to be empty, and the report came, Jesus is alive. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Well, I wish you a very blessed resurrection weekend. And I want to encourage you, people are expecting an invitation on Easter and Christmas. So throw it out there. Ask people to come to church. Tell people, most importantly, tell people about your Savior. I mean, that's the critical thing. But, just because not everybody's a street evangelist, but we can all invite someone to church. And I would encourage you to do that. Pray for your pastor. I hope you're all attending a Bible teaching church. Pray for your pastor as he preaches. We've been praying for other churches in our prayer nights every week that God is using, including Amir's church in Haifa, and praying for his pastor. As he was kind of jokingly saying, people aren't quite sure what to do because he's in church all the time because he got a travel sabbatical this year. So be praying for Bet Eliyahu. That's the name of his church, Messianic congregation. And so we'll I think just, I hope we're going to see a great move of God here on this potentially last Easter or resurrection weekend. So, but again, not setting dates, but I think we need to have that kind of mentality that creates a sense of desperation for the lost and perishing around us. So, well, I'll try and get Louis on with me for a few minutes next week. I was planning on bringing it today, but bringing him in today. Yesterday was his birthday. The big boy turned 2, and but I'll bring him out next week so you can have a look at the most famous dog in the world. I say that somewhat tongue in cheek, but the reality is, everywhere I go, people tell me, say hi to Louis. Anytime I put a picture up, comments from all over the world say hi to Louis. We love Louis. Well, I do too. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there. I'll try and bring him in for a little bit. My wife keeps him at bay while while I'm recording because, yeah, as you've seen him, he's a bit of a lover boy, and he'll want to get up, kiss the mic, and give me some kisses and all that too. So anyway, a most blessed resurrection weekend to all of you. Invite someone to church, pray for your pastor, and keep looking up. Because the fact is, I'll see you here, there, or in the air. And one of these days is going to be that day. God bless you.